Hey, welcome back to the Advisors Compass. I'm Chuck Downs. I'm here with Andy Schwartz, and each month we sit down to have the real conversations that advisors are having about growth, scale, and clarity. So if you're ready to grow faster, scale smarter, and build what lasts, then you're in the right place. We're going to get started. Andy, how are you?
Great, Chuck. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, my friend.
Me too.
Andy, for most people, their savings represent something that's much bigger than just a number. You know, you think about it, it's decades of work. It's security. It's the thing that lets them sleep at night. And so today I wanted to talk about what it means to be the person that someone hands all of that to and what that responsibility actually requires of you as a human. And so I would start with asking you, when you think about the people that are behind the portfolios, not the accounts, but the actual people, what does carrying that responsibility feel like and what does it mean for you?
Great question. What does the responsibility feel like to basically take into your hands somebody's, financial life, their life savings, which represents their life's work, which represents their fears and aspirations. First, obviously, it is an immense responsibility. And I like to say to all advisors and remind myself that if I am their advisor, then someone else isn't, which means that no matter how big or how small a client is, no matter whether we love them more or love them less, that if we are willing to take a client on, then we should feel the responsibility. And we owe them 100% of our attention, our time, our effort. And that's why I say, we are open 7 days a week. I'm not going to say 24 hours a day, although if you call me 2:00 in the morning, if it was something that needed a 2:00 in the morning call, I'm picking up that call. But we are always available because there is, other than their families, in my mind, there's nothing more important than the work that we do. And so, it is a privilege for sure, that people trust us with such such an important thing in their lives. It is a immense responsibility for sure, which I hope all advisors, really appreciate, feel it, because you should. Um, Sometimes it creates sleepless evenings, because we're always thinking about what's going on. You know, we want to make sure that everyone's taken care of. We want to make sure, that we're doing our absolute best. Sometimes we're a little harder on ourselves than we should be, but I think it's probably a good way to think about this. Not to be cavalier about it, not to be dismissive, but to really feel the responsibility. If you can't handle that responsibility, if you can't handle that pressure or that stress, you are in the wrong business. You're in the wrong business.
When for you, when did the weight of that responsibility really land?
I think that for all advisors, depending on where you are in your career, so it's a great question. When do you feel it? When's the first time that you really felt like, holy mackerel, this is heavy. Like this is really, this is a massive responsibility, and I'm really feeling the stress of this. I would say when you feel it as an advisor, whether you're a newer advisor or you've been doing this for a long time, it's probably the first time that there's real market turbulence, the first big downturn in the market, the first time that there is real economic stress. Because when everything's going up, people can be very cavalier, and people can get really aggressive, and it's almost, maybe they think it's a game, and everyone's making money and everybody's happy and everybody wants to be a hero. But I would argue that in a good market or a bad market, if you're a smart advisor, if you're a good advisor, if you're an experienced advisor, you should always feel that responsibility because things change. But I would say that the first sort of tap on the shoulder, Like, wow, this is a serious, serious avocation that we've taken on. This is a serious, serious responsibility and a serious profession that we are in. It's when things get difficult. And that's when we have to, hopefully that's when we're at our best and when we can step up and serve our clients the way they deserve to be served and the way they need to be served.
You you mentioned that you hope most advisors understand that. Do you think most advisors fully understand what their clients are actually handing them, or do you think that most advisors, it's easier to just let the business side of it create distance from that reality?
I mean, do most advisors, understand that responsibility, feel that responsibility? I mean, I'm sure most advisors do. I think it takes a certain personality. You have to want to serve people, I think, to be successful in this business. Because if you don't want to serve people, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Because it has to be about the client. It cannot be about us. It can't be about my schedule. It can't be about my account. My account is the last account that ever gets looked at. It's like, I'm like the cobbler that's got holes in his shoes because the account I'm worried about the least is mine. One, because I'll never fire me. I'll never yell at me, but mostly because I can't disappoint me. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to betray that trust. We don't want to disappoint these people that we love and that have given us this massive trust, this honor. I mean, it is an honor to be the person that people say, yeah, you're my guy. I'm going to follow your direction. And I would say that what's really, really important if you're going to do this properly is you have to listen to your clients. Now, you don't listen to them when they're panicking and the markets are down, but you have to listen to your clients and you have to ask the right questions. And you have to understand what's the purpose of these funds? What are the liquidity needs of these funds? What is their risk tolerance? We have to make sure that they have enough risk tolerance so they can actually, make money and that we segregate assets into long and midterm and say short term, kind of buckets, if you will. But it isn't so important what we think about money or how we feel about money or how we feel about loss or what we think people should do with money. It's important that we know how they think and how they feel and what they're comfortable with, with their money. And I think that we've talked about this in the past. The problem with some advisors is they talk a lot, but they don't listen very much. And that's a problem. And so they want to be heard. They need to be heard. We need to understand them. It's the only way we can serve them.
Yeah, it's what is it? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use it in at least that same proportion.
Right, exactly.
Easier said than done, but really important.
Especially because advisors are all so smart, so it's so hard, so hard. Some
Sure,
of us
that's
as bad
right.
lawyers. Yeah.
I'm sure that's right. Let me ask you this: when someone hands you their life savings, I mean, they're handing you more than money. How do you see what they're actually handing you over and beyond the money?
I mean, they're handing you their trust. They're handing you their hope. Because when they hand you their life savings, depending on what stage of their life they're in, what they're really handing you is they're handing you their retirement. They're saying, I'm going to hand this to you, and you need to be able to create the income that I need to live the rest of my life. They're handing you something to maybe accomplish some goal that they have, some financial goal, whether it's to buy something or pay for something or help somebody with something. And so that's what they're handing you. They're handing you their hope. They're handing you their fear. They're handing you all of that. And you have to be up for that challenge, and you better be present. You better be present because they deserve that.
When you first said they're handing you their trust and they're handing you their hope, I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's like, what a weight to carry. And I can't help but think also how much more authentic advisors would come across if they go into every meeting realizing that's what we're talking about here. They're handing you're applying for their trust and their hope and their fears to carry that. That's a as you've said, that's a big weight to carry, but how much more real and authentic and how much better of a listener can someone be, an advisor be, when they go into it really kind of thinking like that? Hey, I'm here to be responsible, to be a steward of their hope, their trust, and their fear.
Clients have to get the sense why you're there. You cannot be there for yourself. So if clients get the sense that you're there it's a transactional relationship. It's just a basically, I'm not really that interested in what you think. I'm not even that invested in it one way or the other. If the markets are up, great. If the markets are down, not my problem, not my fault. I'm just here to, to do the process. That's a problem. Clients have to know that, we are there and we show up and we are 100% invested, and we are. And we're not just invested with our time and our people, but we are invested emotionally. This matters to us. It's like, I used to always love when the accountant would call and say, "Oh, I've got good news and bad news." The good news is, you made more money. The bad news, you owe $150,000. And I want to reach out and choke that person because I don't have $150,000 for those taxes. And I remember those. And I told my accountant 25 years ago, "I'll pay my quarterlies. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. But if you ever come back to me again, I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to kill you." Right. I'm just, this is not, this will not end well for you. But I think that, for our clients, I mean, we have to be 100%, you know, invested. You can't be glib. It can't be like, we're not bystanders watching something happen to somebody. I mean, we're actually creating a lot of what's happening, whether it's because the way we set expectations, the way we set up, portfolios, the way we set up plans, the way we monitor plans. Are we matching portfolios to plans? Are we paying attention, to what's happening? And look, I think it's a blessing and it's a curse. The blessing is that we get to know our clients so well. We get it can be very, very intimate, personal relationships, which I cherish. And it's a curse because, you know, people, if you have two or three children, you're always worried about your two or three children. You might always be worried about your spouse. You might always be worried about some siblings. You might always be worried about your three or four best friends. I'm worried about hundreds of people and I can't help it. And if you're not at all worried or at all concerned or at all invested with those people, maybe that works. Maybe you're more professional than I am, but I just think that you can't be half in as far as I'm concerned, doing this job, being in this business and be a really good advisor. You either are in and fully committed and fully engaged, or you are not, as far as I'm concerned. That's why people say, when we look at lifestyle practices and, when you're taught to advisors that are always, they work a couple of days, they play golf a lot, they're here, they're there. I mean, I get it. It sounds like a nice life, but I don't think that's not going to be my advisor, and it's certainly not the way I'm going to operate my business. I just think people, they deserve better than that. They deserve 100% of what we have to offer, or we have to know when we shouldn't do it anymore.
This is a good moment to pause and share something that we've been building. It's called the Playbook for Wealth Advisors. If you've built a successful practice, but you still feel like too much runs through you, then this is for you. The Playbook is the framework behind many of the conversations we have on this podcast: how to think like an owner, create real leverage, and grow without sacrificing your time, energy, or relationships. Most advisors don't need more ideas. They need a clear way to structure what they already know. And that's what the Playbook provides. You can learn more at epicsuccess.com/playbook. Let's get back to the conversation. So thank you for that. So hope, trust, fear, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fear for a moment. What does a client in genuine fear look like? And what does that moment require of you that no amount of training ever prepared you for?
So what does the fear look like, when clients are hiring us, when they're engaging with us? fear, there's definitely fear involved in the process. So what are they afraid of? I mean, well, one, they're afraid of the decision they're making because they have to be somewhat fearful. Am I making the right choice? But what they're really afraid of is the outcome that I am hoping and praying for. Is it possible? Is it, can this person help me create that outcome? And I think the most important thing is that we are realistic with our clients, that we set the proper expectations with our clients. But it's crazy though. Fear is pretty much irrational for the most part anyway. And the cure for fear is really sunlight. It's understanding, it's explanation, it's basically, just answering the unknown. So when clients come to us, their biggest fear is, will I have enough, to retire? I think is a big fear. Will I be able to retire when I want to retire is a big fear. So, and there's other things also that they're concerned about. So what we have to do is, if we do a good job on the planning side, we can sort of at least give them a track to run on and a plan. I think when people have a plan, they're not afraid anymore. They might be, they might be a little overwhelmed. They might be a little nervous about the plan, whether they can do it or not, because the plan could be a heavy plan, but they're not afraid anymore because they know what they have to do in order to accomplish what it is was bothering them and was making them, fearful. So what our job is first is to try to figure out what that is. So what is the goal? What is the fear? What is the aspiration? What is most important to you? And then build a financial plan around that. And then we can get rid of this sort of fear, the anxiety, and the irrational behavior, and then the journey begins. And then the journey begins.
Have you experienced or witnessed clients that have experienced a lot of fear maybe during the downturns? And if so, what did that look like? And what was the message that you were coming and sharing with them? Here where we sit another year with, market at close to all-time highs as we're recording this, at some point that's going to shift. What does that look like? What does the fear look like in those days or those weeks or whatever it is, those times? And what's the message that you're sharing with those clients to alleviate that fear?
And the fear isn't always just about where we are. It's where they're afraid we're going. And that's the problem too, is that people extrapolate when markets are going up. Everybody extrapolates that markets go up forever. And when markets are going down, people extrapolate markets are going down forever. So the first thing we have to do is try to train our clients, or, get our clients to understand that that's not true. That markets go down and markets go up, but they don't go up forever and they don't go down forever. So that's a pretty simple premise that everybody knows rationally, but when it's happening, they seem to forget that. I think the most important thing you can do is you can remind the clients that if the market's down 10 or 20%, what is down 10 or 20% is the equity portion of their portfolios. It's not the liquid portion of their portfolios. And if we're 40 years old and we're not going to use this money for the next 20 years, it is completely irrelevant where the market is, other than, is it a buying opportunity because the market is on sale? And what we have to understand is, isn't it funny that everything else in your life you love to buy on sale except the market? The market, we like to buy expensive, and we want to sell cheap. So everything else in our life, if we're selling something, we want to get the absolute best price. But when it comes to our stocks or our investments, we don't seem to get that. We want to get a bad price. We're not interested in the absolute best price. And so what we have to do is remind our clients that, yep, the market's down. But the good news is that we know where the next 3 or 4 years of our income is coming from, especially our older clients that are drawing down assets. And if the markets do get rocky, we'll reach out to clients, and we particularly want to talk to our clients that we know will be more fearful, or our clients that are drawing down for income. And we just simply remind them, we don't try to pontificate about when it's going to end or where it's going to go, because quite frankly, nobody knows where it's going to go. It's like, somebody asked me if I would do a podcast, I don't know, a month or two ago, and I said, what do you want to do? And they want me to talk about the markets. And I think we were talking to a group of advisors. And I said, the last thing a group of advisors want to hear from me is what I think about the markets. And I'm not so sure clients feel that much different, because Nobody really knows. And if clients are really smart, they know that nobody knows what's going to happen the next week or two or three. But what we know is that if we're not selling assets when they're down, then we haven't lost anything. And we know where our 20,000, 10,000, $30,000 a month is coming from for the next 36 to 48 months if you work with me. And in every review I do with a client, I remind them of that. When the market's good, I remind them of that. When the market's flat, I remind them of that. And when the market's down, I remind them of that because it's something that we have to teach them, so that we do not get a lot of panicked calls when the markets are down. Because the clients are like, oh, yeah, I know where my income comes from the next 36 to 48 months. This is most likely not going to last 36 to 48 months, so I'm not concerned about it. And we don't have to waste that energy. And what I like to tell clients is, listen, when they get nervous or upset, I say, you got to do me a favor. We know where our income's coming from. We know we're fine. It seems like you want to worry about something. All right, so why don't we do this? You go find something else to worry about. I'll worry about this. Okay, that's my job. And you go worry about your golf game or whatever else. Because I know you want to worry, and I'm okay with that. Just don't waste the energy on this because we're fine. Because our allocations match our plan. We have a plan. We monitor our plan. We're in touch with our plan, and we will be fine. We own quality assets. Nothing's going away. Things might be worth a little less. They will be worth more later. And I just think that's, we have to train them, and listen, they kind of deserve that because we want them to feel better. We don't want our clients to be, you know, upset, concerned. It's very, very unhealthy. I mean, you help me with that all the time, Chuck. You know how unhealthy it is to have fear. It's a terrible emotion, doing all kinds of damage. So we want to try to eliminate that any way we can.
Yeah. Yeah. We think about the effect fear has on releasing norepinephrine and cortisol and adrenaline, is absolutely hammering our immune system and a lot of other parts of our body. It's great that you can bring that level of faith to your clients like that. And I loved what you said about clients aren't worried about where we are, they're worried about where we might be heading. And so your ability to really head them off at the pass, so to speak, with that, I think is really amazing. And then the reframe, because they're watching, I assume they're watching all the talking heads on TV that are, doom and gloom and stuff that sells. And when you reframe it as, hey, look, we're going to reposition some of these fixed income into what's down, it's a sale. I mean, that just changes everything, I'm sure, for them.
Yeah, no doubt.
So let me ask you this: what do you know about human beings now after everything you've seen in this work that you couldn't have seen or couldn't have known before doing this work?
I would say that what I have learned is understanding your client is really important because if you ask people, they will tell you. And everybody operates differently. We have some clients that, they're riverboat gamblers. It's more important for them to make more money. They don't mind losing, so you have to understand what their personalities are. So I think what I've learned is a couple of things. One, try to get to know, you know, your client and what motivates them. Is it more important for them to not lose money when markets go down? Or is it more important for them not to have FOMO when the market's going up? And different people, will be different. And it's important, I think, to understand where those clients are. But I think the most important thing is to train them. Give them permission not to have to worry about this. Setting the right expectations. There is always a 10% drawdown in a given year, in any given year in a good market, always. In every 5, 6, 7 years, there's going to be a 20 to 30% drawdown. It is inevitable. So the question is, are we prepared for that? And that's why, the word diversification, we always say diversification means is always saying you're sorry, because that means there's always assets that are going up more than the market. And there's always assets going down, more than the market, right? Because everything can't be going through diversified. But the reality is diversification is real. And diversification to us means that the liquidity that we need for clients has to be in something that is not correlated to the market. So that's it's not just a catchword, it's real. And so if we can train our clients work with our clients, remind our clients, how these portfolios work. What is our plan? How does it work? What's our liquidity plan? Because we know what it is. And so they call and they're upset. You go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person's upset about the markets again. No, you understand the plan, but apparently if they're upset and concerned, you haven't explained the plan very well to them. And so you owe them that so they can have peace of mind. Because it doesn't matter if the advisor has peace of mind. Advisors for the most part, because we understand how this game works and we know the markets go up and down. And if we're good advisors, we've taken care of all this. But it doesn't matter if we do that if we don't communicate that properly to them. If we don't, we've got to kind of fill them in and let them in on the joke here, and how this works. And so I think a lot of it's our own fault. Because if we take the time to explain our plan, to explain how it works, to talk about this is what happens when markets go down, because markets do go down. And when the market goes down, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to pay our bills. And this is how we're going to, create that income that we send you every month. Just so we're clear and just so it's not a problem. And if they know that, then if it's a newer client, they might call and you might remind them, go, oh, that's right. I remember you. That's right. We talked about this. We're good. If they're a client you've been working with for a number of years and you've had these, you have this relationship, this communication process, that you've actually communicated properly to them how their plan actually works, it's not really a problem. Yeah, it's really not.
What I hear you saying, it reminds me of how many times I've heard people say, well, I told them that. I told them. What I hear you saying is you're saying training the clients. It's really, it's a repetition and an exercise over and over and over, making sure that they hear it, that it's ingrained in them, that they own it to hear it, because they might hear something 3 or 4 or 5 times, but if they haven't heard it in a few years, are they going to remember it, right?
Yeah. And just because you know it doesn't mean they know it. I think people just make assumptions. So advisors, I think, just make the assumption like, well, this is simple. I mean, they got $2 million in munis. Why are they upset? Well, they're upset because maybe, we haven't communicated very well to them exactly how this process works and why it's going to be okay, that part of their portfolio is down 20%, because what are we going to do to respond to that? And are we going to harvest losses? Are we going to rebalance the portfolio? Do we have plenty of liquidity on the other side? And these are the things that we have to continue to communicate with our clients. I want to lower their anxiety level. I mean, it's not fun to work with clients that are anxious. It's really not fair to clients to be anxious, so our job, we like to be in the anxiety prevention business. We want to lower the anxiety level. And I think people have a right to not have to be fearful, that they have a right to be able to trust the people that work for them, and to know that the people that work for them not just take their job seriously, but are really working hard and doing everything that is available, for them. Because if you can't, then get out of the way and let another advisor come in and do the better job for them. Because everybody's entitled to that. Everybody's entitled to have a great advisor. So either be one or get out of the way. Let somebody else be a great advisor for that client.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a little bit of a different, I think, podcast. Typically we're talking strategies and tactics and, what you say to people, which that was in there, but this was really, more diving in between your ears and just, how you see this. And so this is another question, and this will be the last question for you today. Ed McMahon's going to retire after this until the next one. But if you could say one thing to every client who's ever trusted you with everything that they worked for, what would that be?
The first thing I would say is thank you. I mean, I am so grateful. Look, we have a great business. We have great people, but we have great clients. I love them, and I am so grateful to them, because this big business we built would not be possible without them. I mean, they are everything to us. And I always say, and forgive my bad language, the problem I think with a lot of advisors as they become successful, and as they get a little bit older and they get a little bit richer, they start to believe their own bullshit. And I think people start to feel like that these people are lucky to have me. They're lucky. that I'm their advisor, and I call bullshit on that. You are lucky every time a new, client, agrees to hire you. That is a very fortunate. It's a blessing, and it's not a blessing because you're going to make more money. It's a blessing because it's another couple or individual that put their family, their personal financial well-being into your hands. I mean, you talk about trust, and I think a doctor should probably feel the same way. A lawyer, if someone's in trouble, the guys that do your wills and trusts. I mean, I don't know. You're not. It's not necessarily a massive responsibility, although hopefully you don't screw it up. But there are a few things out there that really matter, and to me, I'm just like, I'm grateful for that. So I just, yeah, I am so, and you've helped me with this, Chuck, but I have a few thoughts in my mind every day. And those thoughts start with how blessed and how lucky and how fortunate and how grateful I am. And I'm grateful for my life, but these people are the people that help me. They create that life for me. And so, yeah, I would say gratitude would be the most, important, feeling that I have when I think about that these people, trust me and let me be their advisor. I mean, I'm just grateful to them. Yeah, really grateful.
Yeah, well, it shows. It shows, and another great, insightful podcast. Thanks for being here, Andy. Thanks for sharing. This has been another episode of the Advisor's Compass. If today's conversation gave you clarity or sparked a new idea, subscribe so you never miss what's next, and share it with another advisor who would also benefit. Because when you grow faster, you scale smarter, you build what lasts. Clarity is right around the corner. Andy, thanks for your time today.
No, my pleasure, Chuck. Thanks for all the questions.
Let's see your golf swing like Johnny used to do.
There's Johnny.
There's Johnny. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andy.
Herein referred to as 1Point BFG. 1Point BFG is not affiliated with Advisor Compass. Chuck Downs is not affiliated with 1Point BFG, nor compensated by 1Point BFG. The opinions expressed by Andy Schwartz are my own personal views and experiences as an investment advisor representative. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, accounting, or regulatory advice, nor does it constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities, and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. The information, as set forth herein, should not be construed or interpreted as 1Point BFG's guarantee of any particular investment outcome or guarantee of future investment returns or results.